My name is Barrister Festus Onifade. Wherever you are listening to us from, either your car, your shop, in traffic, at home, or in your office, or even in the marketplace, turn up the volume because today's topic concerns you as a phone user. Welcome to Consumer Watch. Before we go into the nitty-gritty of what we have to talk about, let's take our consumer roundup, consumer news over the week. Thank you. Barrister Stella Maris, over to you.
Schools collects over 208 billion naira from consumers despite incessant power failures. Nigeria's electricity distribution companies, DISCOs, have collected more than 208.78 billion naira from electricity consumers in just 1 month, despite persistent power outages in the country, one of the highest revenue received by the power utilities in recent times. Data from the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission covering November 2025 indicated that DISCOs got electricity valued at 342.29 billion naira during the period, but billed customers 269.43 billion naira and collected over 200 billion naira of that amount. This came as complaints about load shedding, transformer failures, weak voltage, and prolonged blackouts remained widespread across the country. In the sector, estimated billing, irregular meter readings, and charges during prolonged outages have remained key points of contention. Consumer advocacy groups have argued that the ability of DISCOs to collect such large sums in a month, characterized by unstable supply, raises serious questions about billing practices and regulatory enforcement. However, from the operator's perspective, the argument has always been that the revenue collected is still insufficient to cover the full cost of power. DISCOs insist that high technical and commercial losses, poor remittances from some customer segments, energy theft, and tariffs that do not fully reflect cost continue to undermine financial sustainability. Federal government set to sanitize cosmetic industry. The federal government has reaffirmed its commitment to protecting public health by eliminating substandard cosmetics and ensuring that products used in Nigeria meet the approved safety standards. This policy was designed to address rising health risks associated with unsafe cosmetic products in Nigeria's expanding beauty and personal care industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Stella Maris. As much as over 200 billion naira just in a month, in spite of these incessant power outages that we have noted that Nigerians and electricity consumers up to now are still the one that are paying. They are still the one that are bearing the brunt of incessant power outages. Barrister Daniel, I know you are going to talk about case of the week shortly, but I mean, looking at the revenue that has accrued to these DISCOs, supposing it with the power outages that we have had, I mean, they look to me as two contradictory ends.
Yes, thank you very much, Barrister Festus. Indeed, they're actually contradictory because the federal government aims for Nigerians to have electricity. So they send this money to DISCOs to ensure that Nigerians can have electricity.
These monies are the revenue they made. This money are the revenue over the month. Load shedding, transformer failures, weak voltages, and all the complaints that pervade the industry. They still make that much. That's my thought. How did they make this? Where are they making this money from? Obviously, it's going to be from what we have talked about, estimated billings. Because if you bill well within this period, if you bill well, it means that people are going to pay for what they use.
Yes.
And within this period, we had a grid collapse twice. So where is this money coming from?
Festus, because you cannot have all these persistent issues and still be making a whole lot of revenue. Something is wrong and it needs to be investigated so that the root causes because you cannot make all these excuses and you still make a whole lot of revenue. They are making revenue at the expense of consumers.
And yeah, for me, I think we have to revisit the issue of classification of consumers. Particularly, you realize that electricity consumers that supposedly are on band A are being charged more. And ideally, the band A should guarantee some minimum supply of electricity. So you should have a minimum supply of at least 18 hours per day. You don't have these supplies. How then are you charging them for band A?
Tariffs.
The band A tariffs.
It's as you alluded, Barrister Festus, the band A customers are not getting what
They are not.
what they paid for.
They are not.
Band B are not getting. Band C, whichever band you are on, they are not getting what.
You are not getting the.
But yet the discos are making a lot of
They
money.
are making a lot of money.
It is unfortunate.
And the second issue of sanitizing the cosmetic industry. And for me, you see that over the past few years, practically everybody is a cosmetologist. Everybody, you can sit down in your house, concoct two chemicals together and go online, go on the Instagram. And a lot of Nigerians are victims. People begin to put their money into this venture without knowing exactly the chemical components of all this and the effect of some of these chemicals people use as cosmetic. So it's time for Standard Organization of Nigeria and NAFDAC to sanitize that industry. Let there be standard for anybody, even the small vendors, the small entrepreneurs. The government can really sanitize this industry and make it a standard so that you don't just come into the industry and rip Nigerians off.
It's actually it's long overdue. It's actually long overdue. The sanitization of the industry is well overdue because of, as you've alluded, anyone can just create a chemical and put it on the market. And
Exactly.
People begin to buy. Subsequently, Nigerians begin to have health challenges due to the fact that they are not aware of the chemicals they used to prepare. Some they can say, okay, if you do this, your body will be shining and this and that. So the fact that the federal government is coming now is a little.
It's
too
a welcome
late.
development.
Yes, but then it's a welcome development.
Welcome back, our viewers. I think it's time to go into our case of the week. Barrister Daniel, you have the case of the week.
Barrister Festus, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the case of the week segment. Our case of the week for today is Chukwuemeka Akosa Araka versus ICAT Internet Services Nigeria Limited and Eat and Go Limited. There are two respondents and there's an applicant. Chukwuemeka Araka is the applicant. He was a frequent user of the now defunct Jumia Foods, which I know almost everyone is familiar with. A food delivery application owned by ICAT Internet Services Limited, the first respondent. The first respondent's business model was to host and advertise vendors for the patronage of the users of its application. To facilitate this relationship, the first respondent shared the users' contact details with the vendors. Eat and Go Nigeria Limited, the second respondent, owners of Domino's Pizza, was a vendor on the Jumia Food application, which was frequently patronized by the applicant. Months after placing an order on the second respondent through the second respondent on Jumia Foods, the applicant began receiving marketing communications from the second respondent. Aggrieved, the applicant sent an email to the first respondent demanding the cessation of marketing communications from the second respondent. The first respondent communicated the applicant's demands to the second respondent. However, these marketing communications continued from the second respondent. The applicant sued the first and second respondents. Amongst other reliefs, the applicant sought declarations that the use of his personal data for direct marketing purposes violated his rights to privacy and the principle of purpose limitation. He also sought declarations that the continued processing of his personal data, despite his request for deletion, breached his right to erasure and right to object. The applicant also sought exemplary damages in the sum of 20 million naira and general damage in the sum of 10 million naira. This is the court's decision. In its judgment, the court took view that the first respondent had fulfilled his obligations by using the applicant's personal data appropriately, as the marketing communications did not emanate from the first respondent. It also found that the first respondent had followed the due process of law in alerting the second respondent of the applicant's demand that his personal data be deleted. Therefore, the court deemed that the first respondent had discharged his duty of care. However, the court noted that under the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2023, the processing of personal data must be limited to the purposes for which it was given. As the applicant only provided consent to the processing of his personal data to fulfill his food orders and nothing more, the use of that personal data for marketing communication violated the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2023. The court held that the presence of an opt-out button in such marketing communications is not a defense, as sending such communications was illegal to begin with. The court found that the second respondent violated the applicant's right to privacy and the provisions of the Nigerian Data Protection Act. Consequently, the court awarded the applicant general damages of 3 million naira. Thank you very much for listening in, and I hope you enjoyed the case of the week.
Case of the week graphically illustrates the topic of the day: data brokers and the sales of Nigerian information, personal information. Most Nigerians do not know that personal data, people's data, are today's digital oil. And I mean oil that you know that is the most sought after product. Data is now the oil of the new age. Most Nigerians do not know. And over the years, in the last few years, we now have data brokers that sells personal information of Nigerians. That is the topic of the day. That is the issues that we are really looking at. Let me start with a story that will interest you. One morning, Aisha woke up and saw over 30 missed calls on her phone. Loan companies, betting companies, investment companies, unknown numbers. Then a message started coming in. Madam, complete your loan application. Dear customers, claim your bonus. Aisha never applied for any loan. She never registered for any betting site. She never shared her number. How did they get her details? My people, someone sold her information. That's exactly how it works. And in simple terms, your name, your phone number, your BVN, your email, your address are bought and sold like items in the market. So Nigerians must know that their personal information and data are essential products that people sought after. So who are these data brokers? A data broker is a person or a company that collects your information, package it, and sell it to others. Sometimes legally, but many a times illegally. So, take for example, you go to church for a program. At the reception, you write your name, your phone number, your email address. That's a data collector. That's a data processor. You go to eatery to probably get a meal. You wanted to do a transfer. They said, no, if you are doing a transfer, we must get your name and phone number. So they collect your name and phone number. That is a data collector. You go to the banks, they collect your data and phone numbers. You go to the immigration office, they collect your data and phone number. And every other place, whether a professional body or otherwise, you go for a meeting, they collect your data and phone number. Your schools, hospital, websites, when you are registering or taking up a service in an app, you register, you input your personal data in cyber cafes, registration centers. They collect your simple personal data, and they collect these data and process them and make money off you. And this is what we are talking about. How are these data collected? Let's be honest with ourselves. How many Nigerians know that these data that are installed in the app are used for the purposes of marketing purposes? How many Nigerians know? Most Nigerians do not know this. So when you fill a form online carelessly, your data have been collected. When you connect to a Wi-Fi, you go to any premises and you connect to a Wi-Fi, your data has been collected. Your essential data have been collected from your phone. When you register your SIM anywhere, your personal data has been collected. And these data processors sells her data. And to look at people who profit off this data. Number one, that there is not just the profiting of the data that matters, but the invasion into your right to privacy. The fact that somebody intrude into your personal life and begin to profit off it. Look at the case of the week. I mean, that case graphically illustrates the issue at hand. Barrister Dan, I'd like you to share with us some of the highlights of those cases of the week. First respondent being the Jumia app that is the parent body of all the other vendors, collects the man's data and share it with the other Dominion Pizza, which is the other food vendor that the man had subscribed to earlier. But unfortunately, within the aggregate period the man complained of, Dominion Pizza had sent the man 16 SMSs. And the man complained, stop, I don't want these SMSs. You are intruding into my privacy. They refused. They still went on sending the man messages. And the man approached the court. And this is a novel area. So many Nigerians don't even know it exists. They don't know their right exists. Because you have his data, the man can take you to court. And as we saw, Mr. Akosa took the company, took them to court. And the court held that they were liable for the breach of his right to privacy. And the court fined and awarded the sum of 3 million naira against Dominion Pizza for intruding into his right to privacy. Barrister Dan, I'd like us to unpack some of these issues that we have raised.
Very much, Barrister Festus. I just want to highlight what you said, which is the fact that data now is the digital oil. I think consumers should go home with that for this week. They should be aware that their data is as important as their life. Because someone that doesn't have your information cannot get across to you.
Very well.
So going back to the case of the week now, the case of the week just highlights the fact that failure to protect personal data which you collected in the course of business or in the course of interaction or at church or anything has consequences. If you have people's data and you are careless about it, there's a law. You can be prosecuted for it.
Exactly.
So you cannot just hold people's data, because the reason why the law, especially in the case of the week, came at it that way is because of people's data is very personal. The fact that they are giving you their data is because of it's for a specific reason. In the case of the week now, Mr. Kosa gave his data out for the reason that he wanted to order for a pizza. He did not want anything other than that.
Yeah.
But the second respondent, Domino's Pizza, went ahead and
Took advantage of
the fact that he had his data.
Yeah.
Which was totally wrong, and the court awarded them damages because of you don't do things like that. So going forward, I just want to highlight a section of the Nigerian Data Protection Act, section 39 sub 1, so that people can understand, especially our consumers, Section 39 sub 1 of the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2023 states that a data controller or processor in the case of Domino's Pizza.
Mr. Dan, before you go forward, I'd like you to break it down. Who
break
is a data controller? Who is
okay.
a data processor?
Okay.
Yeah, so that our listeners that are listening to us, we know in simple layman language.
Okay.
Now, if you recall in my intro, assuming I go to a shop to eat, a booker to eat, and I say, Madam, I want to transfer to you because my ATM card is not working. And the madam says, oh, good, I take transfers. But as you are doing transfer, you must put down your name and your phone number. A lot of the food vendors, a lot of vendors do that. So she collect my name and phone number. Thereafter, after eating, after paying, she started bombarding me. Come and eat fresh food and fresh fish. Come and eat fresh chicken. Very morning, afternoon, evening. So in that case, who is the data controller, who is the data processor, and what's the use of those data are?
Break it down in very simple terms. A data controller it can be an individual or a private entity. In this case, it can be the person that owns the booker. She is a private entity. She can also be an individual. It can also be a company or an agency of the government. For instance, now they can say, they can release a circular and say, come and apply for this and this and this. When people go for the conference, they give their personal information, their email, their phone numbers. In that case, the agency, the agency of government, the private individual, or an individual that says, give me this, is a data controller. But to break it down in simple terms now, a data processor now, a data controller is like the big company.
The person who collects the data.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then a data processor now it can also be a company, an individual, or a private person who the data controller like delegates certain functions to, certain data to handle. So breaking it down to very simple terms, the data controller, data processor, they both execute the same function of having people's data. With they warehouse data. But in the case of a data controller, they warehouse more data than a data processor. A data processor cannot have data without the consent of the data controller. So I just hope it's very easy to understand now. For instance, now let's say they say people should come and apply
for a job.
Okay. In a maybe Ministry of Agric or so. Ministry of Agric now is the data controller.
Okay.
Yes, if Ministry of Agric contracts a consultant to handle the employment, recruiting, and everything, the consultant, maybe ABC Limited, is a data processor because of the Ministry of Agric has delegated certain functions from the data they have to the consultant.
Very good. On point. It's also important to emphasize that the National Data Protection Act 2023 imposes a lot of obligations and responsibility on data controllers and data processors regarding the use of personal people's data.
Yes.
And those data that are personal data ought to be used in a fair manner that include lawfulness, fairness, transparency, data minimization, purpose limitation, and this is very important. Yes. Purpose limitation. When you are collecting a data, you use the data for the very purpose you have collected the data for. What it means is that at the point which I am giving you that data, I've given you that data for that purpose. If you use it outside that purpose, you are misusing that data. Purpose limitation, accuracy, accountability, confidentiality, and integrity. These are very, very important. Confidentiality also means that the person is not subject, that data is not subject to theft. Yes. Because each data should be stored in the appropriate manner that it should be stored. If I have given you my personal data, just like the case which we said, you go to a restaurant, you drop your phone number, your email before eating. It means you have given out your personal data. The data controller, who is the person who received those data, should be able to store them accurately so that it will not be exposed to other third party that will misuse them. And this is very important. We need to emphasize this to our listeners, that as you know, your data is the new oil of this digital age. Is the oil, because somebody out there will collect those data, aggregate them, and sell them out to profit on your data. And so it's very important that we know that there is an obligation on the data controllers. Barrister Dan, let me ask you this point straight question. Is it correct that people's data are being sold openly in market?
Pointedly, to answer you back, it is an issue which is very prevalent, because a lot of times people have complaints that I did not do this, I've never been to this place.
You've never subscribed.
I've never subscribed. So how does this person, how do they have my data? How do they have my information? So it can be right to say people's data are sold. So it can be right to say people's data are sold. But the issue now is, how do we get those people that sell these data?
What are the dangers of this illegal data trade? What are the dangers? What are the perceived dangers that you think that is inherent in the sales of data?
Well, the most prevalent one, which I think, in my opinion, is loss of confidence. When, for instance, somebody sees their name or their phone number or their email or their picture in the public space, they become disillusioned. They become sad. Sometimes they lead to depression because of, depending on the context in which the data was used. So a very sad thing for people to have their data out in the public. First of all, I would just want to say that, going by what you said, confidentiality is key. Data is like life. Imagine if it is in a hospital scenario, patients' data are getting leaked. It's a very sad thing. So
it is.
It's a very sad thing, and it causes a lot. It can cause trauma. It can lead to depression. You see people taking their lives because of, they cannot fathom how their
Personal information got out there. Yeah.
And the public is very quick to react to things without waiting to know how did he get there, how did this. So it's a sad thing.
Yeah, you recall when about the principle that guides this issue, confidentiality, consent, and all that. And I mean, I just remember, because talking about healthcare, it means that take for example, if a patient is HIV positive now, and you find out that such information gets to the public domain, it will be traumatic for that patient, for him to bear that kind of trauma, knowing that such information are now in the public domain.
Yes, it's true. The consequences of leaked data cannot be fathomed, because people have different coping mechanisms. Just like this case you mentioned, someone that has HIV is a very private thing. It should only be between the patient and the doctor. If for any reason it's leaked out, the person can do and undo, because of what does he or she stand to lose. So I think on the whole, data controllers, data processors, they should be very, very careful. That is why there is a law. You cannot misuse people's data anyhow. They should be very careful, because there's a law and they can be prosecuted. Just like the case of Vic highlighted, because sometimes people take advantage of these things. They are not aware, but they should be very careful.
You know that your information can be sold out there. Do you know that personal data is now the new oil in this digital age? Have you been a victim of sales of your personal data before? So, data brokers, sales of Nigerians' personal information. Barrister Dan, from your own perspective, who is the most affected by this menace? It's becoming a menace now. Ordinary Nigerians or big businesses?
going to be difficult to say these people or these people. I think everybody is affected because if today can be someone's turn, tomorrow can be another person's turn. So everybody is affected, whether you're a big corporation or there have been instances where big corporations have their information, even personal memos leaked to the public. So ordinary citizens and big corporations suffer. If you misuse personal data, you can be prosecuted because these people, they control a large chunk of data. You can imagine, for instance, the banks. The banks control a lot of information, from your date of birth to where you live, where you reside, who you are married to, who you are not married to. All those informations are very personal informations which should not ever get to the public. So it's a situation of internal vigilance. Internal vigilance is key to ensure that, because you might think they are okay, everything, but then you might just wake up and see your data has been sold.
What do you use internal vigilance? And you recall what the CP said last week. He said, wash your cyber hands.
Yeah.
Wash your cyber hands. And that you must practice cyber hygiene.
Yes.
That's very important, and we must continue to let our listeners know, educate our listeners that don't just be in a rush to click that button. Any button, anything, any app, you click to it could be dangerous.
Yes.
Barrister Dan, what should a victim do when they start receiving suspicious call? What should they do?
Quickly alert the agency or business or company or whatever that is sending them these unsolicited calls to inform them that I did not ask for this. Please stop this. That's the first thing. Just like in our case of the applicants inform them that I only asked for food. I only gave you my data for food. I did not give my data to be marketing to me. So they should inform the company or person or individual or private entity involved first. If after they do that, there's no response, they can then write or personally go to the commission, that is the Nigerian Data Protection Commission, and lay a complaint. Yes. And if the commission doesn't take them seriously, they can now move to the courts.
They should brief a lawyer. That's why you're there. That's why you're there. I was going to add that let's look at the regulations and the law, generally the overview of the laws that regulate this industry, from FCCPA to NDPA and the Constitution also. I'd like you to just brush all these laws as we round up.
First of all, we start with the ground norm, which is the main law itself, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So under the Constitution, by virtue of Section 37 of the Act, like Section 37 of the Constitution, it provides that all citizens' rights to privacy, their telephone communications, their telegraphic communications are protected and guaranteed. It is from the Constitution that other laws derive their validity. So the Constitution protects privacy, meaning that nobody can intrude into your privacy. If someone does that, it's the Constitution has even made it in such a way that it's a fundamental human right, meaning that it is elevated above other rights. Which now governs the protection of private data.
Yeah.
It now states that data controllers and data processors, they have a very high obligation because of the control people's data. So they can never allow it to get missing. They can never allow it to be leaked,
misused
or misused.
Breached.
They must
stolen.
ensure its security in their possession. So the Nigerian Data Protection Act 2023 is the extant law on the protection of personal data. Anybody whose personal data is misused in a way that is inconsistent has a remedy in the act. Thank you very much.
It's been wonderful talking to you this afternoon again on Consumer Watch. And dear listeners, thank you for listening and staying tuned to this program. Remember that the program we have talked about today is data brokers, the sales of Nigerians' personal information. And I'd like to leave this with all our listeners, that before you get into that app, please read the app permission. Avoid unknown Wi-Fi. Don't overshare online. Don't overshare. Use strong password and verify forms. Opt-out promotions are always there. That in every app, opt-out promotions are always there, so that at any given time that you get uncomfortable with the intrusion of those messages, you can quickly opt out. Remember that your data is your identity. Protect it like your wallet. Once it is lost, it's going to be difficult for you to recover it. Once again, my name is Barrister Festus Onifade, your consumer right partner. See you again next week. Guide your data, guide your dignity, and guide your future. Thank you very much.